Marcus's food was different from every other food truck in the city. The taste, presentation, and especially how he created perfect results with limited resources amazed everyone. A chef asked curiously, "Where did you learn these techniques?" Marcus quietly replied, "I learned to feed many people with limited supplies. Sometimes it was a matter of survival." Welcome to the Human Stories. Before we begin this delicious but surprising story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button. Because Marcus's true story runs much deeper than you might imagine. Marcus Rodriguez, 52 years old, operated a food truck called Sailor's Kitchen in front of downtown Chicago's busiest business district. He worked from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day, always at the same hours in the same spot. His customers called him Marcus. The food truck was small, but the organization inside was perfect. Every ingredient was in its exact place. Kitchen tools were arranged with military precision, and Marcus's working speed was much faster than normal cooks. But what really caught attention was Marcus's food. When making burgers, he seemed to calculate meat doneness to the second. He cut his fries so evenly that they all cooked at the same time. And most surprisingly, how he created such variety of flavors with limited ingredients. Marcus had routines that seemed almost ritualistic. Every morning at exactly 6:30 a.m., he'd arrive and begin his preparation sequence. First, he'd inspect every ingredient, checking for freshness with the precision of a quality control expert. Then he'd arrange his cooking tools in a specific order: spatulas on the left, tongs in the middle, ladles on the right. His knife set was always perfectly sharpened and positioned at exact angles. David noticed that Marcus never wasted a single motion. When he cracked eggs, he'd save the shells for compost. When he trimmed vegetables, every scrap was either used in stocks or carefully disposed of. Even his cleaning routine was methodical: wipe down surfaces in circular motions, always moving from clean areas to dirty ones, sanitize hands every 10 minutes exactly. How does Marcus do this? Many curious customers wondered. The lunch rush was where Marcus truly shined. While other food truck operators would stress and make mistakes under pressure, Marcus seemed to enter a zen-like state. His movements became even more fluid, his timing more precise. It was as if chaos energized him rather than overwhelmed him. One day, David, a young chef working at a nearby restaurant, got curious and asked Marcus, "How do you make so many varieties with so few ingredients?" Marcus smiled, "Son, you get used to working with limited resources. You learn to satisfy 100 people with a handful of rice. Where did you learn that?" "Long story," Marcus said and closed the topic. But David sensed the mystery hidden in that answer. There was something in Marcus's eyes when he said limited resources, a distant look that suggested memories from somewhere far away. The next afternoon was crowded, as usual. Office workers had flocked to Marcus's food truck for lunch break. A line of 40 to 50 people had formed. Under normal circumstances, this situation would panic any food truck owner, but Marcus didn't get flustered at all. The first customer came. "Marcus, 5 hamburgers, 3 chicken wraps, and 2 fish burgers." Marcus nodded and sprang into action. David was watching closely. Marcus's movements were like a dance, no wasted motion, no lost time. As if he had experienced this situation hundreds of times. What struck David most was Marcus's ability to track multiple orders simultaneously. While grilling burgers, he'd be prepping vegetables for wraps and seasoning fish for the next batch. His spatial awareness was incredible. He never bumped into anything, never reached for the wrong tool. "Order up," Marcus called out, sliding perfectly prepared meals across the counter. Each plate was arranged with the precision of a fine dining restaurant, despite the fast food setting. In the first 5 minutes, he had prepared orders for 15 people. Without any mistakes, without any shortages. How is this possible? David wondered. But Marcus wasn't done. As the line grew longer, his efficiency actually increased. He began calling out to customers. "Ma'am, I remember you like extra pickles. Sir, you always get the spicy sauce on the side." He was personalizing service even during the rush. 10 minutes later, the line had melted away. 40 people had received their food and left satisfied. David couldn't hold back. "Where does this speed come from?" Marcus replied while washing his hands. I'm used to cooking in a hurry, son. Sometimes it can be a matter of life and death, life and death. Marcus stopped, looked at David. Sometimes there's a lot of hunger around. You have to be fast. What do you mean by a lot of hunger? Marcus paused at his cleaning, considering his words carefully. When people haven't eaten in days, every minute counts. You learn to work with whatever you have, and you learn to work fast. This answer made David even more curious. But Marcus didn't elaborate that day. In the following days, David began observing Marcus more closely, and he noticed several strange details. The first detail, Marcus's ingredient usage. He wasted nothing. He used every piece of a tomato, every layer of an onion, as if every ingredient was very precious. But it wasn't just frugality, it was reverence. The way he handled food suggested someone who had seen real scarcity. The second detail, Marcus's portion control obsession. He calculated every portion given to customers to the millimeter. But this wasn't stinginess, on the contrary, he ensured everyone was fed fairly. David noticed that when homeless people approached the truck with little money, Marcus would somehow make their small orders stretch further without them knowing. The third detail, Marcus's cleanliness obsession. His hands were always clean, the kitchen was always spotless. As if he had very strict hygiene rules. But these weren't normal restaurant standards, this was something more intensive, more systematic. The fourth detail that David noticed was Marcus's weather awareness. He seemed to instinctively know when storms were coming, adjusting his prep work accordingly. Might be rough seas today, he'd mutter to himself while securing loose items. But the strangest detail was Marcus's way of speaking. Sometimes he said rations instead of portions. Sometimes he said chow time instead of lunch hour. Sometimes he'd refer to his prep area as the galley. These terms sounded familiar to David, but he couldn't remember from where. Marcus also had this habit of scanning the horizon, even in the middle of downtown Chicago. He'd pause in his work, look out past the buildings, as if watching for something. When David asked about it, Marcus just said, "Old habits." One day he gathered courage to ask, "Marcus, where did you work before?" "Various places," Marcus said briefly. "In restaurants, no." "Different kinds of places. What kind of places?" Marcus stopped, thought. "Places with lots of people and very few resources. Places where you had to feed everyone, no matter what, like disaster areas." Marcus's eyes sharpened. "Yeah, like disaster areas." That Thursday, everything changed. During the lunch rush, a construction worker came to Marcus with a cut hand, bleeding heavily. "Marcus, can you help? Until I get to the hospital. Double quotes. Marcus immediately sprang into action. He pulled out a first aid kit from inside the food truck. This kit looked much more professional than what a normal food truck owner would be expected to have. It was organized with military precision, bandages sorted by size, antiseptics in order of strength, tools arranged by function. He cleaned the wound with professional technique, applied pressure to stop bleeding, disinfected with proper procedure, and bandaged with skill that spoke of extensive training. "Are you medical personnel?" asked the worker. "No," said Marcus. "But I've seen a lot of injuries." David was watching all this. Marcus's movement style, his lack of hesitation, his skill with the materials, the way he talked the worker through the process to keep him calm, this wasn't just experienced first aid. This was the result of much deeper training. "You're going to be fine," Marcus told the worker. "Keep it elevated, change the dressing tonight, and see a doctor if you notice any signs of infection." He rattled off infection symptoms with medical precision. After the worker left, David asked, "Where did that first aid kit come from?" "I always carry it with me." "Why?" Marcus was silent for a long time. Then, "Because you never know when it'll be needed. In my experience, emergencies don't announce themselves, but this professional." "Are you really not medical personnel?" "I'm not a doctor, David, but I've experienced many crisis moments in the past." "What kind of crisis moments?" Marcus averted his eyes from David. "Moments when people were very hungry, very injured. Moments when you're the only one who can help." "Where was this?" Marcus began cleaning his already spotless counter. "Far from here. Different kind of life." The following week, Marcus's food truck had an unexpected visitor. An old man, in his 60s, in sailor's clothing, walked up slowly, studying Marcus's face with growing recognition. When he saw Marcus, his eyes filled with tears. "Marcus, Marcus Rodriguez, is it really you?" Marcus froze, a spatula halfway to the grill. Tom Miller, yes, son, I found you after 15 years. The two men embraced over the food truck counter, both emotional. David watched this scene in amazement. "David," Marcus said, turning with tears in his eyes. "This is Tom Miller, my former work colleague." Tom smiled through his tears. "Work colleague, Marcus, you saved my life." "Tom, please double quotes no Marcus, this young man should know who you are." Tom turned to David. "This man was the Navy's best cook. On warships, under very difficult conditions, he fed thousands of sailors." David's mouth fell open. You were a sailor." Marcus quietly nodded. 20 years. "Not just a sailor," said Tom. "Ship's cook. And one of the best. In the Persian Gulf, Mediterranean, everywhere we went. This man created miracles with limited resources," Tom continued, his voice gaining strength. "You don't understand, David. Marcus wasn't just making food, he was keeping morale alive. When you're months at sea, eating the same rations day after day, a good cook isn't just feeding bodies, he's feeding souls." Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Tom, let the past stay in the past. No Marcus. This story needs to be told." Tom began telling despite Marcus's reluctance. "David, you can't know what this man did. In 2003, during the Iraq War, our ship was on duty in the Mediterranean, 500 sailors. And one day, the supply ship couldn't come. Marcus, Tom, this really isn't necessary. Double quotes, it is necessary. Marcus." Tom continued, "For 15 days, no new supplies came. Under normal circumstances, people would go hungry. But Marcus. This man utilized every material on the ship, canned goods, dried foods, even caught fish from the ocean. For 15 days he kept 500 people not just fed, but with meals that tasted like home." David was amazed. "Is this real?" "Just the beginning," said Tom. "The real story is what happened during the storm." Marcus's face changed. "Let's not talk about that night, Tom. That night showed your heroism, Marcus." Tom turned to David. "We were caught in a massive storm in the Mediterranean, Category 3 equivalent winds. The ship was rocking so violently that walking was dangerous. The kitchen was completely unusable, pots flying, burners going out, impossible to cook normally. But people had to eat," Marcus said quietly, "especially during storms. Bodies need energy to fight seasickness." Marcus, in the middle of that storm, with the ship rolling 30 degrees each direction, prepared food for 500 people. "For 18 hours straight." 18 hours, David asked, nonstop. He rigged safety lines in the galley, secured everything that could be secured, and found ways to prepare hot meals when any sane person would have just handed out cold rations. Tom's voice grew more emotional, and that night, a fire broke out on the ship. "Marcus, Tom, enough. No Marcus. David should know." When the fire started in the engine room, while everyone was panicking, Marcus not only secured all dangerous materials in the kitchen, gas lines, flammable oils, everything, but then he joined the firefighting crew. "That was protocol," Marcus said simply. "Protocol doesn't explain carrying injured sailors to safety while smoke filled the corridors. Protocol doesn't explain organizing the galley as a temporary medical station when sickbay was overwhelmed." Tom looked at David intently. "This man wasn't just a cook, David, he was a lifesaver. And not just that one night, throughout our entire deployment." David looked at Marcus. "Is this all true?" Marcus was silent for a long time. Finally, "It was the duty, David. Every sailor on that ship was my responsibility. Feeding them, keeping them safe, keeping morale up, that's what a ship's cook does. For 20 years. Yes, different ships, different seas. But always the same duty, feed people," Tom added. "And Marcus wasn't limited to just sailors." "Tell him about the humanitarian missions." Tom. Double quotes no, Marcus. "David needs to know the full story. After the tsunami in Indonesia in 2004, after Hurricane Katrina, after the earthquake in Haiti, this man volunteered for every disaster relief mission the Navy offered." "What do you mean?" David asked. "Emergency feeding operations," Tom explained. When disaster strikes and thousands of people have nothing, the Navy sends ships with mobile kitchens. Marcus was always first to volunteer. Marcus finally spoke. People were hungry, that's all that mattered. Tell him about Haiti, Tom urged. Marcus sighed. After the earthquake in 2010, we set up emergency feeding stations. The infrastructure was gone, no electricity, no clean water, no supply chains. We had to feed 2,000 people a day from a field kitchen the size of this food truck. David couldn't believe it. 2,000 people, how is that possible? Limited resource management, David. You use every material with maximum efficiency. You don't waste anything. And most importantly, you ensure everyone gets their fair share. But the logistics alone double quotes you adapt, Marcus said. Local ingredients when available. Purify questionable water. Stretch protein with starches. Make filling meals from almost nothing. And you never, ever run out of food while people are still hungry, Tom added. I was there for that mission. Marcus worked 20-hour days for 3 weeks straight. Local people started calling him Angel of the Kitchen, because no one who came to our station left hungry. What was the hardest part? David asked. Marcus considered this. The children. When you see a kid who hasn't eaten in days, and you only have enough ingredients for maybe one more pot of soup, you find a way to make 2 pots, always. So why are you working here now? David asked. Marcus thought carefully. Because my duty hasn't changed, David. I'm still feeding people, but this is so small scale. Size doesn't matter. What matters is service. Every person who comes to this truck is hungry. My job is to feed them well, treat them with respect, and make sure they leave satisfied. Tom. Marcus, when you retired, big restaurants wanted you. Celebrity chefs offered to train under you. You could have made serious money. I know, Tom, but I never worked for money. I worked to feed people. David was beginning to understand. This is why you use every ingredient so carefully. Yes, because wasting means leaving someone else hungry. This is why portion control is so important. Everyone should get their fair share. Rich executive, construction worker, doesn't matter. Everyone deserves a good meal. This is why you're so fast. You shouldn't keep hungry people waiting. And you never know when the next emergency might happen. This is why you know first aid. In my experience, feeding people and healing people go hand in hand. You take care of the whole person. After Tom left, David began looking at Marcus differently. The food truck was no longer just an eating place, it was a mission center. The next day, David told Marcus's story to his young chef friends. The rumor spread quickly through the restaurant community. But Marcus didn't change anything. He continued working with the same humility, the same care. Within a week, customers began treating Marcus differently, more respectfully, more gratefully. One customer, a businessman who came daily, said, Marcus, I heard you were in the Navy. I was. Why didn't you ever mention it? The past isn't something to brag about. What matters is what I do today. Another regular customer, a nurse from the nearby hospital, someone told me you fed thousands of people in disaster zones. That's incredible. No, ma'am. It's a responsibility. And I still carry the same responsibility. A group of college students, who often came for cheap lunch, began leaving bigger tips. When Marcus tried to refuse the extra money, one of them said, You fed people in Haiti for free. Let us pay it forward. Marcus accepted the tips, but David noticed he used the extra money to give free meals to homeless people who couldn't afford to eat. Word spread beyond just customers. Local news wanted to interview him. Food bloggers wanted to feature his story. Marcus politely declined all requests. Why don't you want the publicity? David asked. Because it's not about me, Marcus replied. It's about the food and the people eating it. The moment it becomes about me, I've lost focus on what really matters. One evening, after a particularly busy day, David asked Marcus, Do you ever regret it? Working in such a small place when you could be famous? Marcus smiled while cleaning his grill. David, you're misunderstanding. I'm not working in a small place. What do you mean? I'm still serving people. Used to be 500 sailors on a ship, now 200 customers daily on the street. Numbers don't matter, the mission is the same, but prestige. Does prestige come from keeping people fed, or from reviews in magazines? I make 200 people happy and full every day. That's enough for me. David thought about this, but you could do much bigger things. Open restaurants, teach cooking classes. Double quotes David. Greatness isn't in scale, it's in intention. Here, every day, I give the best service I can. I feed people good food at fair prices. I treat everyone with respect. This is my duty, but don't you miss the adventure, the travel, the importance of military missions. Marcus stopped cleaning and looked at David seriously. Every day here is important. That businessman who gets a good lunch has energy for an important meeting. That construction worker gets nutrition to work safely. That college student eats well on a tight budget. Each meal matters to someone. I never thought of it that way. In the Navy, I learned that service isn't about the size of your stage. It's about the quality of your performance. Whether you're feeding 500 sailors or 50 office workers, you do it right. A month later, David decided to open his own food truck. He wanted to apply what he learned from Marcus. Marcus, you taught me so much. What did I teach? Cooking isn't just cooking, it's serving people. It's about respect, efficiency, and never wasting anything. Correct. And the most important thing isn't bragging about what you do, but doing what you do well. Marcus smiled. You've learned the most important lesson, David. What's that? That every meal you serve is an opportunity to make someone's day better. Whether they're a sailor on a ship far from home, a disaster victim who hasn't eaten in days, or an office worker grabbing lunch, they all deserve your best effort. One last question. How do you define yourself? Marcus stopped, thought carefully. I'm Marcus who cooks for people. That's how it was 20 years ago in the Navy. That's how it is now on the streets of Chicago. The location changed, but the mission never did. David nodded. Now he understood. Marcus's greatness didn't come from past achievements, but from continuing to serve with the same dedication every single day. Before leaving, David asked, "Any advice for my new food truck?" Marcus handed him a small notebook. "These are some recipes and techniques I've learned over the years. But remember, the most important ingredient isn't written in any recipe. What is it? Care. Care for the food, care for your customers, care for doing the job right. Everything else is just details." Marcus Rodriguez was an ordinary man running a food truck in Chicago's busiest area, until his past was revealed. Then everyone learned that sometimes the most modest people can have the greatest stories. But Marcus's real greatness wasn't serving 20 years in the Navy, or feeding thousands in disaster zones, or saving lives during storms. His real greatness was understanding that service has no expiration date. Real heroes don't retire from helping people. They just find new ways to serve. The man who fed thousands of sailors for 20 years, who brought hope to disaster victims, who turned a ship's galley into a place of comfort during storms, was now continuing that same mission from a small food truck on a Chicago street corner. Because he understood something most people miss: the size of your kitchen doesn't determine the size of your impact. It's not where you serve, but how you serve that matters. Every burger flipped with precision, every order filled with care, every customer treated with respect, it was all part of the same mission he'd been on for over 2 decades: feed people well, and make their world a little bit better. Have you ever met someone like this? Someone who seemed ordinary but had an extraordinary past. Someone who continued serving others long after they could have stopped. Share their stories in the comments and tell us which city you're watching from. If this story touched you, subscribe and help ensure stories like this are heard. Because sometimes the strongest people are the quietest ones, and the most important work happens in the most unexpected places. Until we meet in the next story. And remember, next time you see someone ordinary working on the street, at a food truck, or anywhere else, maybe their story runs much deeper than you think.